Ready?
We are ready. How are you all doing? Francis, over to you, Squire.
Welcome everybody. I tell you what, I was looking forward to today's session. It's going to be another busy one, and we've got so many great people on the session as well today. Thank you very much, Mac, as always, to help us and to set all this stuff up. And also remember to remind everybody about our session 10 days from now to do the audio version of this. But today we're going to talk about why people hate passwords. But more importantly, why should people love them? Because if you get to love them, not only will it save you time and energy and heartache, but we're going to show you today, or we're going to share with you. I've written a whole list here about what should users' password security habits be. We're going to talk about password strength and complexity and the best practices. Whether you should use unique passwords and the dangers of course, reusing passwords. Is it safe to save your passwords in your Chrome browser or your Safari? Is password managers now the way forward? Two-factor authentication, should you use it, or how's the best way of using it? And how often should you change your password? We get asked that question a lot. And then we're going to talk, especially Ben is going to get this one, talking about phishing and social engineering attacks and the golden rule around passwords. And then we're going to talk about using passwords in public Wi-Fi areas. And then hopefully, if the time permits, we're also going to talk about biometric authentications, different types of passwords that we can use. And one that I'm specifically looking forward to is Louise is here today. And Louise is going to talk about, how do kids feel about passwords, and do they actually embrace using passwords? And Hannah, welcome. So sorry you didn't have the link earlier, but normally Simon Newman joins us, and you're standing in for him. So thank you so much. And so we've assigned people to different topics. And Hannah, I'm just looking down the list. I'll tell you shortly which one, unless there's one specifically that you want to talk about. But if I can ask all our panelists today just to keep it short, 1 to 2, maximum 3 minutes, so we can get everybody to share their knowledge and their best practices. And for that, I thank everybody. They do it with their own free will and time. So everybody's here to help protect people that listen to these events. Today is our 5th event, and I encourage everybody to look back under the Security Everywhere LinkedIn page and have a look at the previous events we did. Last month, we did a whole session. We went over, actually, we did 1 hour and 15 minutes all around mobile security, and the feedback we had was phenomenal. So let's start the discussion today with Paul. Paul Newman, tell me, what's your view on password security habits? Because you do some amazing talks, and I've seen you on stage, and what you do scares me, even me.
I'm sorry I scare you, Francis. I try and... Do you know what? Actually, no, I do scare people. I purposely scare people. And sometimes when I'm doing an event, especially if there's police in the room, they get very panicky about what I get up to. So to let everyone know what I do, I'm a magician and a mind reader. But I use my mind reading techniques to steal your passwords, your PIN numbers, your mother's maiden name, your first pet dog's name, all of that stuff that's, really unimportant, right? But I do it purposely. I want to scare you, and I want to entertain you, and I want to make you think. Now, you've just asked me to talk about password habits. I'm going to tell you some of the things that really, really knock me, okay? Some of the things that just really get me on my soapbox and make me want to almost pick people up and just slap them, because this is nuts. Number 1, don't put your passwords on a Post-it note next to your computer. For God, you are making this so easy for me, okay? Number 2, if you're married, if you've got kids, I love your husband, your wife. I love your kids. I really do. But please don't use their names for your password, okay? Because that is so easy. Then if you start going, I'll be clever, I'll mix 2 of them. They'll never figure this out. Yes, I will. Okay, it will take me about 2 seconds. I'll have that one. All right. Or your favorite son's name, if you've only got one son, for example, their name plus their date of birth. Come on, right? This is stuff that I can research on you so easy on social media. I can have you done, and I'll have charge of your company accounts within seconds. Okay. Now we're going to make it worse. You and I, Francis, we both know that I can get access to programs that will brute force passwords, and they will trial things. So all of the things I've already said will take these programs about half a second to work out. If you start using words or a combination of a couple of words, maybe we're up to about 10 seconds. All right. But if you start to use a good password manager, if you start to use something that combines letters and numbers and symbols and does it between 25 to 50 odd characters, then I haven't got much chance. Okay. If you're using a password manager that takes it away from anything personal to you, I've got less chance. If you're doing this the right way, then you've got a chance of stopping me. Okay. The truth is, if you don't use something other than your own human brain, I can get you. That's the truth of it. And I'm going to go and relax a bit because I can feel my heart rate's already gone up. I'll go sit in the corner for a minute.
Paul, that's a great start. I must tell you a story. You just made me think now. The other day, I'm on a call. This lady phones me up and she was referred. And while she's talking to me, I mean, one of the services that we offer companies or people is that we can go on the dark web. You know, we can buy some really bad stuff. And normally this is where they sell everybody's compromised passwords, you know. So anyways, I'm talking to her and I'm running a quick report and I could see all her compromised passwords on the dark web because we can see the full password. I said, so Mary, how's Lola doing, your dog? Because what? She said, no, Lola died about 2-3 years ago. I said, I'm so sorry to hear. And then all of a sudden the penny dropped. She says, how did you know I had a dog called Lola? I said, because every other hacker and scammer has already bought this data for less than 1 penny per record. And that's how I know.
This is it. For less than 1 penny per record. If you've been involved in any account that's had a breach, and unfortunately there's lots of them, right? If you've used your own human brain to come up with your passwords, even if you've changed those passwords now, you've probably done slightly different connection of the same things. You might have had first child, then last child plus a date. And, you know, if you've now switched it to last child and then first child, I'll never work out that difference.
Yeah. Anyway, listen, I think hopefully after today, people will think twice about this. Thank you, Paul. Let me pass straight on to Theo. I want Theo to talk about, you know, password strength and complexity, best practices. And you know what I love best, Theo, when I speak to people and say, yeah, I know, you know what? I use 3 different passwords and I've got a 1 exclamation mark. And then next time around, when I change my password, I put 2 exclamation marks. And then the next time I put 3 exclamation marks and I feel really safe. What do you say, Theo?
It reminds me of a show that Michael McIntyre did, where he tells the whole crowd that he now knows their password, and that's exactly the methodology that he used. So, you know, you don't take my word for it, but let's take a look at what the NCSC, the National Cybersecurity Center, say when we are looking at something like Cyber Essentials. And they recommend that you either use an 8-character password, but it has to include or be accompanied by multi-factor authentication. But the minimum requirement is actually 12 characters. And those 12 characters have to be a combination of, exactly as Paul said, numbers, letters, symbols, not something that you're easily going to remember. And quite frankly, the easiest way to generate those types of passwords would be to use something like a password manager. You know, if you're looking to change passwords, or you're looking to have different passwords, which you should be doing for each of your accounts, there's no way that you're going to remember 12 characters or stronger, 25 plus, by using your own mind. You have to use something like a password manager. Does that sort of give you the idea where we should be going? You're muted. You're muted, Francis.
One day. I like talking to myself. I thought you were very good at lip reading, Theo. But so, you know, I know that Paul alluded to earlier. What would you say is the minimum character for a password today? Is a good password that I call one that's hard to crack?
My default is 12 to 15 as a start with multi-factor authentication on it.
Yeah. Well, we agree with that, but did you know now with our password manager, we go for a minimum of 20 characters.
Good.
And later at the end of the show, at the session, I'm going to share with everybody quite a few good websites that you can go and look at. And one of them is how long it will take to crack a password. And if you put this 20 character password in, it takes on average 1.36 trillion years to crack. And I'm sorry to tell everybody, you'll be going to be dead by then. So, but that's kind of our minimum yardstick to start with 20, or like you said, the minimum 16 upwards. Otherwise, but remember, if you can remember a password, it's simply not good enough. That's my view. Let me pass straight over to who shall we go for next? Richard, let's talk about two-factor authentication, and remember to introduce yourself and tell everybody what you do for a short sentence.
Sure. So, Richard Fincher. So I've been running a company for about 25 years that does this email hosting product, amongst other things. And we're very keen to persuade people to use two-factor authentication. I have this phrase, which is passwords aren't fit for purpose, which is, so essentially, it's a bit like having a combination lock and a key lock on your door. So one thing is something you've got, your key, and the other one is something that you've remembered or otherwise stored, which is the password. Now there's kind of two types of two-factor authentication. One is where it sends you a text message, and the other one is a bit more advanced, where you have one of these things like Google Authenticator. So which is better? Well, people can clone your SIM card. They can also steal your phone. They'll try and snatch it from you while you're using it, so that the lock on the phone doesn't engage. So bear in mind that if somebody has your phone, then they can often clone the SIM card or whatever, and then they will get that. So I reckon that the Google Authenticator is a better thing. But how about this one? A lot of people I'm speaking to now will use an old, obsolete phone to do their Google Authenticator, not their main phone. Why is that? Well, this phone that they use for Google Authenticator never leaves the house. So no one's going to be able to snatch it from you on the street. You're not going to be able to drop it in a puddle. You're not going to leave it in a hotel room. So that's a little tip that you can do. But also bear in mind that when you get a new phone, don't give away the old phone until you've transferred all of the Google Authenticator codes from your old phone to your new phone. Because if you don't do that, suddenly somebody else who you've given the phone to is going to have access to all your accounts and you won't. One thing I would just finish by saying is Google Authenticator. A lot of people look at it and they think, God, do I really have to do this? And it's a little bit like the famous Irish village where nobody locked their doors because everybody trusted each other. Well, it might have been possible once upon a time not to use Google Authenticator, but that world has long since gone.
So, Richard, on that point, you mentioned about text messages as using a two-factor authentication, or to use, an app such as Google Authenticator. Just so everybody knows, the other one that we also recommend, Google Authenticator, is very good. But the other one is the Microsoft Authenticator app,
yes,
which you can download right now from the Apple Store or from your Android store. Which one do you think is better, Richard, and why? Which one do you think is the text messaging authentication method or using the Authenticator app?
Well, let's just look at how you know your phone has had the SIM card cloned. See, there was a little while ago where people would go into EE and they would say, "Oh, I'm Mr. Richard Fincher. I just had my phone nicked. Could you please transfer my SIM to a new phone?" Of course, you spend £1,000 on the new phone with the shop, and of course they want to help you transfer your number. The only problem is the person who walked into the shop isn't Richard Fincher at all. So when I'm using my phone at home, I suddenly wonder why I've stopped getting any phone calls. And after a couple of days, I start to investigate, and it turns out that all my phone messages and my text messages were going to somebody else. So that's why I don't particularly reckon that text messaging is the way to go on this. Now, the telephone shops, the mobile phone shops, they've clamped down a bit on this practice, and they now request that you go in with ID before they will change your SIM card to a new phone. but that's still potentially a source of, I mean, what if you knew the person? What if you're a hacker and you knew the person in the mobile phone shop and they were on the take? So I still am not super keen on the text message version of two-factor authentication. I much prefer Microsoft Authenticator, Google Authenticator. Adobe have got their own one, but it only works with their products. And obviously you can't have a separate app for every kind of piece of software that you want to unlock. But yeah, I mean, the Microsoft one does a few other things for you besides the basic unlock, doesn't it? I think, Francis.
Yeah, it does a whole lot of I mean, they keep on adding new features, but I think thank you so much for your answer, Richard, which was very good. And in the last session when we covered the mobile security in detail, we spoke about the SIM pin, and if we have time, I'll touch on it again maybe later. But that's how we avoid that problem of people cloning your SIM, because we dealt with four new cases in the last 2 weeks.
Have you really?
Were cloned.
So still very much a live issue then. Yeah.
Sorry.
If I could step in there, you don't even have to go in the shop anymore. As we know, we had and we discussed on the call last week with the SIM swap. Now that we have eSIMs,
yes,
they can just provide. You can do it all online or over the phone, and you provide the identity of your phone, and then they apply their eSIM. And in the case that we had a couple of weeks ago, it was actually because the lady had set up her online account for EE 10 years ago when she first joined them. Completely forgot about it, never used it, but she had a weak password and no multi-factor. They hacked the account, ordered the eSIM, and that's how she had her. So you don't even have to know someone in the postal service to be able to intercept the SIM or go in, with fake ID or know someone on the take. It's all electronic, and because she set up this account years ago, forgot all about it, so used a weak password because obviously didn't have the concerns of today with multi-factor and what have you, and that's how easy it is now.
Yes. What you just raised another interesting point as well, which is I'm sure we all know one or two relatives, or perhaps mother and father, that kind of thing, people who we sort of have an informal kind of security advisor relationship with, and obviously if you have kids, that goes with the turf completely. So when we consider these issues about which is best, do we do this, do we do that, it's tempting to just draw a little circle around ourselves and say, well, okay, I'm okay, but of course we should remember that there's always other people that look up to us in terms of security and vulnerability, particularly if parents are starting to get a bit forgetful, maybe even they've got an early onset Alzheimer's or something, and being there for them in this respect. So when you think of these questions, also think of the vulnerable people that look toward you as their informal security advisor within the family, or within the church, or whichever group that you're part of.
Agreed, Richard. Thank you so much for the input and reminder at that point, because we're busy working with and again, Anna's here with the London Cyber Resilience Centres, and we're starting an education process for younger kids to start teaching the grandparents.
Excellent.
Which
done.
is great, because so we can go from the bottom up instead of the top down. So yes. Ben, I want to move over to you, and I really wanted you to talk about things like passwords in browsers. Is it safe? Because we see that every single day, and then people wonder why they get hacked. Would you mind covering that topic, please?
Just going to carry on the two-factor first of all, and the one that we missed out, of course, we've mentioned about text, the authenticator apps, password managers. Password managers will support the MFA now.
Yes.
And the key thing with that is it's all automated. So obviously you have to have an authenticator app to access your password manager. But once you're in your password manager, it auto completes it all for you. So actually, if you're in and out of online resources like I am all day, it's a real productivity, and a time saver having the multi-factor in the password manager. And that brings me on to a question we had from in the chat from Sarah Wallace. Two-factor authentication is difficult for the likes of VAs, PAs. It used to be, because of course it was tied to a device with either an app or a text message. But if you set it up in a password manager, you can then share that password. So now suddenly all the people who have access to that password now have access to the multi-factor as well. So where it was a big issue, Sarah's exactly right. But actually using a good password manager that can securely share the passwords with the multi-factor actually completely circumvents that. So there's no reason now why people shouldn't be using multi-factor on all their accounts. And the ones that are likely to be shared with the PA are likely to be quite sensitive in terms of the data they contain. So they should be secured, if not as much or more than others. We did also have a question from Sean Duran, because we were talking about the password habits. Is it better to use 3 random words together? You can, but what's the chance of remembering 3 random words? You're better off using a phrase or a small sentence. Red sky at night, living the dream, and then put some special characters and numbers in there to mix it up, because then you're more likely to remember it. But Sean, that is a very good question. So you mentioned about browsers, passwords in browsers, nightmare. Obviously, we've got all these passwords. About 5 years ago, the browsers said that they'd save our passwords for us, making it really convenient. And then a couple of years ago, the hackers realized that they could exfiltrate them incredibly easily. They're not encrypted, they're saved in plain text. If you've got you don't even have to click on anything. You can go to a website, it's running an advert, the advert's been compromised. So it's nothing to do with the actual advert itself, it's a third-party advert. And because it's running on a script, it's running in the browser memory, and it can then extract all the passwords. As you well know, Francis, there's a website that has a password recovery tool, which does exactly that, where it goes and extracts all your passwords from browsers, and it can literally do it within about 30 seconds. Of course, the other thing is having your...
Ben, 1 second.
Depends how long it takes you to install the software.
Every password from every browser. Remember, I've done a video on this.
Yeah. Yeah. But of course, the other thing that we wanted to mention was that if you've got your password saved in the browser, and this is particularly going back to our relatives and older people, you know, we've come across cases where people have been scammed and allowed somebody onto their computer, thinking they're from Microsoft support or from BT to do with their broadband. And if you've got your password saved in your browser, they can go straight into all your resources. They can just go into the browser history, see what you've accessed, and then it's automatically logging you in. Which then brings you on to, and this was a very good point you made, Francis, about that when you go to a website, it says trust this device or stay logged in. Again, a bad thing to do, because you're just keeping the door open, and then should anyone get into your browser, they've got completely free access straight into your resources. And what they do is they steal something that's called a session cookie. So when you log in, the website sends your browser a session cookie to say this person has successfully authenticated using their password, multi-factor even, and this is how long they're allowed to stay logged in for. And the attacker can nick those session cookies to then access your resources without having to use any authentication, because the session cookie is the authentication. And of course, if you put stay logged in, the time limit on that session cookie is going to be that much more, that you're just leaving the door, as I say, even wider open. But just to finish my little bit, one of the things that's key for me when we talk about passwords, and this goes on to phishing and social engineering, when you get that email and you click on the link, and what the attackers do is they'll compromise, they've got a compromised email account, and they go through the contacts, and you're on their contacts list. So you've now received an email from somebody you know that you have regular contact with, and it's saying, I want to share this document with you. Please click this link. And so you think, well, I trust this person. You click the link, and then it asks you to put your username and password in. The golden rule, everybody, if there's one thing I want everybody watching this session today to take away and tell everybody, especially friends, family, and the people who are less technically aware, you should never need to put in your username and password to access somebody else's document. They should be providing you with the password you need to access their document. And the scammers rely on this phishing technique to get you to put in your credentials to access this document so that they can steal them and then compromise your account. So it's the golden rule. If somebody's sharing you a document, if somebody's asking you to access one of their resources, they provide the password. Never, never, never put in your own username and password. So thank you very much, Francis.
Thank you, Ben. There's a lot of information there that you just shared, and I think people have to listen back to that maybe 2 or 3 times to really take to heart all the things you said in those few minutes, because, you know, The other example that I saw even this morning, which I'll add to what you said, was I logged onto my Facebook account and I put in my username password using our password manager. And then, of course, I asked for my two-factor authentication code. And when I put the code in, which only lasts for 30 seconds, it popped up and says, do you want to save this in your browser? And I said, no. And my advice is always to say no, for that reason that Ben said, because the moment you say yes, the next time you log on to Facebook, it won't prompt you for the two-factor authentication code. So if somebody can get onto your computer or steal your cookies, which stores that information inside, that's what the cookie does, they will then be able to take those cookies away and save them on another computer, log on to Facebook, and they straight into your account without needing the two-factor authentication code. So please never, ever say yes to saving that information in your browser, ever. And my other tip is if you once we're going to discuss that later, but once you've moved all your passwords into a secure vault using a password manager, go and delete all these old unsecure passwords sitting in your browser. And on that note, William, I know you're itching to talk as always.
Am I?
Contribution. You're one of our top clients, and you've been in this game for a long time. Can you expand to me, around the dark web and, why the whole password, where does all this stuff start and how does it spread and why do people get attacked? And because they don't even realize that, their Garmin account has been hacked or their LinkedIn account has been hacked. And now all of a sudden the stuff is out there completely unknown to them. So if you'd like to explain to people why knowing, in other words, monitoring the stuff is so important and being alerted the moment you've got a compromised password.
I set my email password in 1996. That was my first email. My password length was 5 characters. No special numbers, no special things, anything. The advice wasn't there, was it? Right? And there was no minimum rules over how the length and the complexity of the password that we see today. I like using passphrases, exactly what Ben said earlier. I can remember them. I've got a good memory for abstract things that are not relatable back to me. But I think there's always a continual battle with passwords from convenience versus security. That's the big thing, isn't it? And if we make things, we spoke about not writing notes on passwords on notes, right? Leaving them by your desk. So massively important. It's a huge faux pas. But the problem is that as security professionals, if we make the controls too onerous, that the password changes every 30 days and that you can't reuse the same password, well, that encourages that type of behavior. So sometimes we have to be balanced with how we view security in enforcing the kind of controls that we put out. To answer your question, Francis, because of convenience, because it's a nightmare to try and remember all these different things, because we're not the quickest typers, right? And so we get used to the pattern of our password, not so much the word, but typing the pattern. It becomes second nature, right? Reflex type action. So because of that, we reuse passwords and we call that daisy chaining, right? So we reuse them. And the problem with that, I suppose, is that because we have so many different sites that we create registrations for, that we sign up to, and that can be a plethora of everything, right? Some of these sites do not have very good security controls on them. They're breached. And when that's breached, that list then gets exfiltrated and taken away. And that gets traded on the dark web, so Francis, you put up a link for Have I Been Pawned, didn't you? Where you can check your password to see if it's been involved in public breaches. And that's a really good place to start. Unfortunately, on the dark web, these are sold and traded for, like you said, pennies, which is the real frightening thing with it. And social media, I left all my social media, right, basically, except for LinkedIn, because it wasn't doing anything for me anymore. But if I think about the value that had, if someone was to get onto my social media account when I did have it with 1,000 friends or contacts that I had, and then using that to either defraud them pertaining to be me, or to be able to harvest the data that I'd put on that thing. Think about if somebody gets into your phone and they get into your Google locations and you've got locations location services activated. They can see all your movements and trace all of this. So there's so much data available on us. That password, that is the mechanism to get in. And yes, we have multi-factor, and hopefully that's illuminated why it's so important to have additional layers that protect our identity and our information from getting out. I'll just say one last thing as a thing. I came up with this really smart idea. I thought it was smart to buy a random book, right, to hold my passwords, which everyone says is a massive no-no to do. And I thought, I'm going to be really clever, right? Not only am I going to hide this book in an innocuous place, but I'm going to write the passwords in invisible ink. That way I have to use a blue light to be able to read them, right? Fantastic idea, except I never realized that the bloody invisible ink fades after about 6 months and it's not legible anymore. So there you go. Learn vicariously from me. I'm a dummy with that one.
It's simply brilliant. I speak to a lot of people. They say, oh, no, I've written my passwords in a book. I'm like, wonderful. Do you have a cleaner? Yeah. So where do you put your password? Oh, no, it's on my desk in my office, my home office. I said, great. So do you ever leave the cleaner alone? No, listen, all cleaners are not crooks, but, and I said, so they can't open the book and read your stuff. And so, God forbid, if you had a fire, a flood, or theft, how would you recover your passwords? No, wait. I'm like, okay, do you see that as a problem? Theo, I want to come back. Thank you, William, as always. Theo, on Thursday, so last Saturday, Theo and I and a few of us were together actually in close to our office, and believe it or not, but we attended a duck race. This is a yearly event next to the office, and they put the ducks in the lock, and you can buy a duck, and the duck comes all the way down, but that's beside the point. So my daughter was there, and this bloke sits next to my daughter, a friend of hers. Theo, tell us the story. What happened next?
Well, just to clarify, it's rubber ducks. It was
a rubber duck. Yes,
rubber duck
not
race.
proper duck.
So he's also a magician, and he asked me to, at random, it was scary, Paul, to at random go and search a word on Wikipedia and a topic on Wikipedia that I wouldn't show him. So out of the 15 billion words that are on Wikipedia, I managed to choose one that was 9 letters long. And just by, not even social engineering, just by reading my responses, he was able to get that word. Further to that, he then went and found what I had searched for on Wikipedia, which I hadn't shared with anyone, which not even my wife of 26 years was able to figure out that I would ask this question on Wikipedia. It was quite mind-blowing. I still want to know how he did it. The search term, just out of interest, was frog legs. And he found it within 30 seconds.
I mean, how did he do it, Paul? Do you know?
Dude, I do exactly the same thing on stage. I can't tell you because the magic circle would send ninjas after me and kill me.
Okay.
Sorry. I was going to say, Paul, don't tell them. Don't tell them.
Good answer, but
not going to happen. Not going to happen.
It's you know what? We'd love to have you on one of the sessions. It was just mental. It's all anyway. Moving on. Hannah, please introduce yourself. You are, dare I say, much better looking than Paul. That normally attends from the. Sorry, not Paul, from Simon from the Hertfordshire, from the Cyber Resilience Centre. But thank you so much for coming in this place today. And your topic is all around, the unique passwords and the dangers of reusing passwords, because you deal with so many businesses and you see this all day long. Why are people doing this, and what are the Cyber Resilience Centres doing to help educate or help people prevent using these bad habits?
So thanks, Francis. So at the Cyber Resilience Centre for London, we help small to medium-sized businesses strengthen their resilience against cyber threats. So we offer free support and guidance and information, but much of our guidance is in line with the National Cyber Security Centre. So it's all there already. We're just sort of reiterating information that's already out there and freely available. And part of my job is going around the businesses, talking to them face to face about all this information, because they don't have the time to sit on a webinar such as this, because their daily life is business and they lose money if they close up their business. So that's why we actually take this information to the high street and have all this conversation with them. And much of it is purely just, I think it's just that they think they're too small to be a target, is first things first. They think, well, surely cybersecurity is meant to be applicable mainly to the big people who have e-commerce websites like, Amazon, Google, Facebook, all of those. They think that they're the ones that need to take the security seriously and look after people's information because they're providing the online platform service. But I always explain it as like, if you're in a flat block, for example, you have a landlord who looks after the wider building and they provide all the facilities to keep that building locked. They give you a intercom and a key fob and things to keep those doors locked. And, also they have maintenance and look after the building and the overall premises. But if you leave that door unlocked and leave your own front door unlocked, then you're opening yourself up to robbery. And that's essentially what these online platforms are doing is, they will keep your information safe and provide you a service as they're meant to. But if you don't keep your own doors locked, then your accounts are going to be hacked by criminals. So, strong passwords are needed for that. But also, if you use the same password for every online account and your one password is compromised, criminals will try every other online platform. And, you're probably most likely going to be on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, all of those. And most people think if I use the same password for all my social media accounts because it's easy to remember, it's just, I think, a matter of coping and things. We have so many passwords to remember that we actually reuse them all. But they think, let's use one password for all my social media channels. But criminals know this. And so they're going to then try it for all your other accounts as well and see they just like the challenge of seeing how far they can go, how many extra accounts can they hack. And it's so easy for your passwords to be compromised nowadays, in a data breach that's out of your control. It's easy to fall victim to scams, which someone will talk about later. And, one password and like having to remember which then accounts you have that password for and having to change them all again is quite tiring. And so, having different passwords is definitely recommended because at the end of the day, can you remember which password you actually have the same password for? I mean, I have so many accounts, I've probably missed one and it'll be likely that one will also get hacked as well. And so that's where, we've had the discussion around password managers as well. I can't remember every password, but if I have a password manager, I can have a different password for every online account. That's up to 56 characters long or so, as long as I want. I can't remember that at all, but a password manager can. So it's utilizing the technology that's out there and available for us that's there to help, and is better probably than our brains.
That's really important information. But just to end what you're saying, you go out there as a cyber resilience center and constantly educating people. What are the resistance that you're seeing, with small businesses? I know that you said that they just think won't happen to them, but what's stopping them from implementing, a very good password manager?
I think some of the attitude towards password managers is that they don't know they exist. So they don't know that they're actually there to help. And so some of the businesses we've spoken to and said, have you considered a password manager? Explain the reasons why. Then they're like, oh, that's actually a good idea. I might go ahead and do this now. Others who are more familiar with password managers think that, obviously they're a target for criminals and that obviously there's a risk involved in having them hacked, all your passwords are in one place, which obviously, yeah, they are. But it's weighing up that risk. It's having all your 20 online accounts vulnerable because of a weak password, or having them all locked really tight because your password manager can make them tight, and then hoping that password manager, if you use a reputable platform that hopefully takes their responsibility seriously, you're implementing two-step verification, having strong passwords on your password manager vault. On the whole, they're pretty much protected to the best of your ability, and it's weighing up those risks, So that's most of the resistance.
Well, thank you very, very much for adding in, and you're welcome back anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, because also, again, I'm watching the time here. We've got 16 minutes left, and we've got a few questions more to answer. Plus, Gary Brown, who does a lot of help us implement all our password managers for clients. He's brilliant because he normally spends an hour with each person that we onboard, and he's excellent at teaching people how to use our password manager. He's asked a question here. He said, what do we think on Google Password Manager? If you have Google or a Gmail account versus using a different password manager.
Francis, if I may,
Yeah.
the Google Password Manager doesn't support multi-factor. So something like Keeper or LastPass, I think are the ones referenced in the question. Obviously, we actually use the enterprise version of Keeper as our password security service. They all support actually generating the multi-factor code as well. With the Google Password Manager, you've got to have the separate authenticator app.
Yeah. Which is a great, and that comes back to the question that was asked earlier. Remember about, can we share the two-factor authentication code? And a lot of people do not use this because they don't know there is actually a way to fix this problem securely. Okay, so moving on, little time. Let's go for Louise.
Sorry, Francis.
Yeah.
Francis, can I just quickly pick up on the other couple of questions?
Yeah, please.
So
go for it.
Michael Collin was asking, does the Password Manager link between devices? Yes. So you have one account that you pay for, and then you have the app installed on all of your different devices. So whether that's a web browser extension that can be on your iPad or on an actual computer, or you can have an app on your phone, and then you've got access to all your passwords across all your devices. Who else? We also had one from LinkedIn user. What if I forget the Password Manager password, or the password gets compromised? Well, if the password gets compromised, we certainly with our service, we enforce multi-factor. You have to have multi-factor to secure the Password Manager account to prevent it getting compromised. And if you forget the Password Manager, there are recovery mechanisms. So whether it's a secret question that you define, or a lot of them now provide long codes that you then have to take down, or if again, because we provide our password security as a managed service, we can actually turn on account transfer if you'd like us to, so that we've always got the possibility to recover the account for you. But obviously that's at the user's discretion. We did have one more that I picked up on. Sarah Wallace did actually, after the PA question and multi-factor, asked about eSIMs and how we can protect up against those. So we did cover that briefly on the last month's LinkedIn Live, which is available on the Security Everywhere LinkedIn page. It's a really tough one because it's a new scam that's just been sort of taken up. If there is an eSIM that's provided, the mobile company should provide you with notification via a text or email to say your eSIM is going live, and therefore you've got the chance to actually contact them to say it's not you. But at the moment, it's a very, very tricky topic. So yeah, Sarah, I suggest to go back and look at last month's LinkedIn Live, and I'm sure it's going to be a topic of discussion that we dive into again very soon.
Exactly, but Ben, I did this for that other lady was done the other day, and again we turned on SIM pin on an eSIM, and I've done probably another 20 people in the last month. So please turn on your SIM pin on your eSIM, because that'll stop people from cloning your SIM, whether it's physical or not physical. So yeah,
and again that's in our LinkedIn Live from last month.
It is. I'm just looking at one of my slides because, as you know, I do a lot of talks on the subject. And one of my slides that I actually got from the Cyber Resilience Center, in 2007, Microsoft estimated that the average person had 6 passwords. Who wants to guess in 2022 what that number is now risen to?
28.
Anybody else?
16.
No,
50.
I'll go for 100.
How many, Richard?
I'll go for
50.
100.
What did you say, Theo?
100 plus.
Between 70 and 80. But that was in 2022. So that just shows you probably this year, I reckon you're closest, Theo, close to 100. And that's why, for me, the whole idea of the 3 words, it's okay, but only if you can remember 70 to 80 words. Forget that. Rather go and get yourself a strong password manager, an enterprise one, protected with multi-factor authentication, and let the password manager generate all your passwords. I like to keep my brain really empty. And I just want to remember one sentence every 4 hours. I'm paranoid. So every 4 hours, my password manager logs me out, and then I've got to log back in with my authenticator code. It's annoying, but getting hacked is even 10 times more annoying. So, Louise, you do amazing work with kids, and we
Thanks.
all love to hear from you. Tell me, what is it with kids and passwords?
I mean, obviously AbSafe is a charity that educates children, young people on risk. And one of the risks that we cover is cyber resilience, we call it. And I think they don't even really know what passwords are. So when we talk about basic education, I mean, if somebody, say they learn it in school, the teacher, they may cover it because it's part of their outcomes. They don't listen because they're too busy doing other things. And they usually think it means their passcode to their phone. So when we say, like, what's your password? And they go, we're not going to tell you. And I said, well, how long? I said, I don't want you to tell, but how long is it? They'll say it's either 4 or 6 digits because they believe their password is their passcode to their phone. So when we look at basic education, we're not even meeting the basics. And like you, Francis, with your visit, is I'm constantly astounded by how little they understand about security online and using different passwords with different applications. So what we did, in the before the end of term in Scotland, it's a little bit earlier than England, is that we developed a room where they had to figure out how they would gain information. So on a very, very basic level, it's not similar to what Paul does because he's amazing. So we give them clues. So it's almost like an escape room. So they go onto, we've created a Facebook. So they go on the Facebook where they get information about a mother's maiden name and what date of birth the kid is. Because 2 years ago, there was a post saying, oh, happy birthday to my beautiful grandson, or whatever it may be. Then they have to go onto Instagram and they have to piece it together. And what we're trying to teach them is that every step of that way could have been prevented by not disclosing information on either TikTok or because that's their main go-to now. And also it's not that hard. And then we say to them, a bit like Hannah was saying, and a bit like, but there are computer programs that do that in seconds. So it may take them our sets are 23 minutes long. It may take them 23 minutes. But if then you say, actually, there are computer programs that will break that down in seconds. So we're trying to get them to start critically thinking about their security. And it's a bit like what I was saying before, Richard, is they've all got very nice North Face jackets, or they've got nice bikes, or they've got skateboards. And we say, well, do you just leave them about? Do you just leave them outside? Would you go into the centre of Aberdeen and not lock your bike up? Because the time it takes to really create a good password isn't that much longer than actually locking your bike up. So we try and give them real examples of why security is important. And that doesn't even include who is linked to their account, whether it's their parents, their carers, their aunties, their uncles, and how that spider web of vulnerability occurs. And my other quick point is what Hannah was saying, is that I obviously operate a very small charity and we invest a lot of money in our cyber security. So we have a person that checks it. We've got systems running. It gets regularly checked and updated and cleaned. But what the problem is that funding is allocated on a provision. So unless the funders start saying, we will not fund you unless you have a sustainable and a relative security system on your devices, then we will not fund you. Because unless they include that in the funding for the charity, it's very difficult to charities to allocate funding to it. So if we get funding, it'll be allocated for a certain thing. And if they're not including cyber security in that, then it's very difficult then to allocate enough resources to that. So I think there's something about that needs to be acknowledged and almost increased on, that if you want to get that funding, you have to have that in place. Or we're going to allocate a fifth of your funding or 50th of your funding to cyber security, because unless that happens, then it's not in people's foremind, and then you can't then allocate it across when you get assessed what you spent the money on. So very quickly, if I put a bid in and my IT cost is quite big, they'll say, what are you spending it on? And I'm like, well, funny you should ask. You should go and speak to somebody I know called Francis. Right? So we tell them. So I think there's several things that we can improve on, but I think that is one for particularly small and medium business. And like what Richard said, is that charities need to see themselves as vulnerable because computers don't have morals.
and you can't outsource responsibility either. I think it's everybody's responsibility to educate our kids, you know, and I believe we should start at age of 5 and start teaching them. And the one thing that we do for a lot of our parents now, so when somebody comes to us and buy our password security, which is the enterprise version, we include 5 licenses that they can use for their family, which is great, which means you can then give it to a free license to your family. And then, of course, they can start at a young age to learn best practices around. And then they don't have to worry about remembering passwords either and keep their brain safe, which apparently is quite funny according to Douglas. But that's I like your comment there, Douglas. Very, very good. So again, watching time, we've got 5 minutes, so the answers need to get much faster now, please. You also see, thanks to Mac, he's just put a link on the chat onto how long will it take a hacker to crack your password. And believe me, I think that's overstated by about 50%, but still, it's good. Go and click on the link. It uses an algorithm, so don't worry. Put in an old password or one of your other passwords and show this as well to your kids or your staff or your family members, and let them see how long it will take to crack an existing password. So looking at my list here, let's go for, I want to go back to Theo and talk about, you know, public Wi-Fi. You know, people sitting there and they're doing banking and they sit there with their laptop and they're, say, man in the middle attack. Do you want to have just a quick point on that, please, Theo?
Don't use public Wi-Fi.
Okay, how can we protect people when they're using public Wi-Fi? Because some people don't have a choice. They've got to go and sit there. The kids are going mad, upset with the partner. They've got to go to the coffee shop. They have to go and sit and work there, so they don't have a choice. How can we secure them?
So it's a difficult one to answer. They need to adopt very good security practices for their own devices. So they need to make sure that their devices are up to date, their browsers up to date, the software is up to date. They need to use something like a VPN, and there are free VPNs out there. That doesn't protect the device from local attack if there is a hacker on that network. Ivan has raised a couple of interesting points throughout the conversation, talking about Markdown and a few other things which are outside of the scope of this discussion. But the point is, get yourself a VPN. As far as possible, don't go and enter in passwords, because even if they can't intercept your traffic because you are using the VPN, they could still be looking over your shoulder. They could still be watching what you're doing. They could still be recording what you're doing. So if you have to try and be secure, be paranoid. Think that you are being watched, because you probably are being watched. I hope that helps.
It does. Every little bit helps, as they say, always. And again, please encourage everybody to go and follow these people on LinkedIn, and also especially with Paul. Paul does the most amazing talks, and he does this live. So please use his services, and everybody else you'll see when you link to their LinkedIn. They all do amazing stuff, and I thank them always for coming to contribute. Looking at the time, we've got 3 minutes now. Coming back to biometric authentication, people think, who is it? Jill asked a lovely question there. When will our face be our password? Well, it already is, because you're already using it on your iPhone or your smartphone, and one could argue that we look at passport control now when you walk through at an airport. So that's going to become more and more and more, and retina scans and things like that. But as we've seen with AI now, how people can, or using certain programs, you can now even fake people's faces, and they can fake you talking, and not even you. It's frightening, but it's happening. So not sure how that's going to pan out in future, because apparently only about 9% of businesses in the UK now are using password managers, which I find amazingly low, but that is increasing. So the other point I wanted to make is about if you look at how many keys do you need to open your car, the answer is normally 1. How many keys do you need to get into your front door of your house? The answer is normally 1. How many keys do you need to get into your dad's house or your mom's house, if you have a key, of course? Normally the answer is 1. So my point that I'm making here, how many keys do you think a hacker needs to get into your entire life? And the answer is 1. So that's why, for me, as a summary here, passwords are so important to love, because if you have unique passwords on every single account, your chance of getting compromised is so low, because at least they'll only be able to get into that account, or only into that, which is still bad, but at least they're not going to get into every account because you've only used 1 key for all your accounts. And on that point, Mac, I'm so sorry, I haven't given you a chance to talk, but I think we started 3 minutes late. If we can do 3 minutes. And also, I almost forgot, I'm going to be in a lot of trouble if I don't say this. I have a wonderful VA, and she's going to kill me if I don't make a mention. Johanna Reynolds, if she contacts you after this and just sees how you enjoyed the session, you know, she does work with me. She's amazing. If you need a VA, you need to talk to her. But Mac, you know, again, coming back to passwords, you know a lot about LinkedIn. And again, thank you for helping us today and doing these sessions. You know, and I know, if once your LinkedIn account gets hacked, and the main reason why it gets hacked is why?
Francis, it's the same thing. It's you know, all the public information that we put out is one, and the other is because a lot of people use simple old passwords. You know, most people, when I start working with them, they use a password that is you know, a friend or a family member's name, and it's the same. And I get the comment of, well, it's the same as my all my other passwords, and I'm like, you just said that out loud. Like, I've just walked into your office. We're trying to help you here, and you know, you're using something that obvious. And to give you an example, Francis, I had a client about 3 years ago who came to me and said, "Oh, well, you know, we want to update our LinkedIn profiles and everything else." We did loads of work with him, and we told him, "Please, you know, make sure that you check your passwords." But he used the same password on everything. And he then got hacked. His LinkedIn, they went onto his LinkedIn profile, changed his email address, changed his contact number. So when it came to him trying to reset the password, it went to the hacker. And it took him 3.5 months to get LinkedIn to give him access to an account that took him years to build, with all his contacts and connections. And you know, losing contact with his own clients. That this is where, you know, he was showing up in front of them all the time. So yeah, mad.
And it could have been avoided.
Absolutely. Francis, can I share one more thing? Ironically,
Please,
this came through earlier while we were on this call.
Sure.
So one of the things that's happening on social media, because of the financial challenges people are going through and the cost of living, is there's an interesting little scam that comes across on WhatsApp Business, especially because how many of us are now putting WhatsApp Business on our Facebook pages, our LinkedIn pages, so that you're putting the WhatsApp Business contact number so that people can reach us all the time, and there's a bot that will auto respond. I've just had a message come through because of what I do on LinkedIn. I also have a Facebook page with a WhatsApp message, and the message comes through as, "Hi, my name is Anna, and your resume was recommended to our company by Capgemini Recruiter. After going through your resume over and over and over again," wow, I mean, this is amazing. They really spent some time. "I have a position that is perfect for you and would like to recommend it to you. It pays between 260 and 450 pounds a day. Are you interested? If you are, please add our manager. He will tell you more about it. Please click the link to register. Thank you. And then please reply with any number." Now the link then asks you to enter, because it looks like a Google form, then asks you to enter your Google username and password. And boom, I mean, that's how easy it is for them to literally, and I mean, they've got no credentials on here. There's no company name. The thing that people will see is the money and the opportunity, and that will mask and put them into a lot of trouble. So I thought I'd just put that over.
No. I'm so glad you mentioned it. And again, there's so much in my head that I want to share, but there's so little time always. But we've dealt with 5 similar cases since Monday morning. It is now Wednesday afternoon. 5. And another reason that we haven't mentioned, Ben, is why, and again, I've put our link there to our website, security-everywhere.com. If you want to investigate more about how we do enterprise password managers, please get in contact. But one of the best things about using a password manager, apart from saving you time, when one of those links come through, those dodgy links, if you go back to your password manager and you click on, let's say it was a LinkedIn link, and you go access LinkedIn via your password manager, you will never be caught with a dodgy link because they'll change the link LI to L1 NKE. So if you always access websites from your password manager, not directly, your chance of getting hacked again falls down to close to 0. Such a simple thing. So it's not just the speed, not just saving you time, it's actually making sure that you only ever go to authenticated links, because that's the secure link is saved inside your password manager. Now, finally, thank you for that, Mac. Mac decided we need to do LinkedIn Radio. So we're doing LinkedIn Radio when is it, Mac?
2 weeks Monday.
2 weeks Monday. There you go. So, and it's in the afternoon, because we get complaints from a lot of people in the US and other countries to say that we need to do this in their time. I'm like, okay, because Ben and I, we used to do what it was called Clubhouse. We did it all the way through COVID, every Friday afternoon between 1 and 2. So we thought, okay, let's try and help more people on LinkedIn. So that's that. And it's funny you should mention that about scams, Mac. You led me straight into what's next month's topic. We're going to cover scams. We're going to talk about all the scams that are currently going on, the new ones, the old ones. And of course, we're going to give you loads of different ways to make sure you're not one of those people that fall for the scams. So on that note, I wish everybody a great day. Please, please, please share these links to people you know and care for, because the more people we can share this information with, the more people will not get caught. Simple as that. So thank you for the panelists. Again, I remind you, please go and follow them on LinkedIn. Look at what they do. Use their services. Donate all the money you have to Louise's wonderful charity, because she needs every penny you can get to maintain. And I thank everyone for your time. And I'll see you at the LinkedIn Live session, where you can ask any question you like, and we'll be able to answer it. And you'll be able to come on stage and we'll talk to you. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks. Nice to meet everyone.